Replicants are like any other machine. They're either a benefit or a hazard. If they're a benefit, it's not my problem.
The new Blade Runner is out, Blade Runner 2049, directed by Denis Villeneuve, director of Arrival and Sicario. When I saw those films, I knew this guy had a nice touch for heavy, slow-paced, serious filmmaking, and this was a perfect fit. Blade Runner 2049 is probably the best sequel possible in this situation. We're living in a time where everything's being remade. I'm pretty sure that Jurassic World is going to be getting a remake within the next couple years. And this is some hallowed ground, the source material, not only the movie, but the books, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. But Denis Villeneuve did a fantastic job. The cinematography was amazing. The visuals are amazing. Who is this film for? If you like the original Blade Runner, I will bet that you are really going to like this. This does a lot of the same things that the original Blade Runner did and does them really, really well. It even has some of the same flaws of the original Blade Runner. If you've never seen Blade Runner, because you just never really gotten around to it, I mean, there are a lot of people that haven't. It's a long movie. Maybe you fell asleep trying to watch it. Or maybe Harrison Ford started doing a narration in the beginning and you turned it right off. But if you're just into sci-fi and you enjoy sci-fi visuals, practical effects, neon lighting, sort of that 80s synthy soundtrack, actually forget all that. If you just like to see inspiring sci-fi visuals that will sort of tickle your creative imagination about what a future could be like, in a future where humanity lost everything that was wiped out. Anything you put on the cloud is now gone, and this is a humanity that is now trying to recover from that. It's very, very dystopian in that way, and there's so much to look at. Nearly every scene in this movie is a glorious feast for the eyes, much like Ghost in the Shell earlier this year, except this is a far better overall movie. If you like the philosophy behind sci-fi, for example, I love sci-fi movies because they ask questions about what it is to be human. And this movie especially is about what is it to have a soul? What is it to be human? And we're challenging that as humans progress and are intertwined more with technology, in this case replicants, but in our case, AI, never being separated from our phones or the internet at any time, and constantly putting things up to the cloud that is learning about us. And we're talking to our devices now. And this is coming at a very pertinent time in our timeline as a human race, and it makes a lot of sense. So if you're into that aspect of sci-fi, you're going to find a lot to love here. It handles the subject material very, very well. It handles the philosophical questions very, very well, and it actually attacks them from different angles that weren't present in the original movie. So in that sense, it took what the original movie did very, very well, and it expanded upon it using modern techniques in just a couple decades worth of time to think about it. Ryan Gosling is fantastic. He brings a lot of warmth to the character. He displays a lot of range. He really fleshes out that Blade Runner character in different ways that we haven't seen before. Now, as for the flaws of this film, it actually shares a lot of the same flaws from the original movie, which some have criticized as being a bit cold and maybe a bit clumsy in some of the pacing, where the narrative gets a bit jumbled and it just gets a little bit, not confused, but it doesn't execute all the way through. I think that there's a lot more warmth in this film than the original had. I definitely cared a lot more for what Gosling was doing with his character. But I would say that the pacing, especially near the end of the movie, in that final third act, when they start ramping up, it loses a bit of momentum. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that the movie is 2 hours and 45 minutes long. I think it's 2 hours, 45 minutes is one of the listings I saw. I saw another claim of 2 hours and 30. It definitely felt like it was close to 3 hours for me. About in the last 25 minutes of it, I was feeling the length of this film, and I went and saw it at noon. So it was the first thing I did that day, second thing I did that day, and I was full of energy to watch it. Now, the action near the end, and this is sort of a common thing we see in a lot of modern movies over the last 10 years, is that the third act has to be full of action. This isn't a Marvel movie. There isn't going to be a world-ending battle or anything, but there was more action than I was really expecting, and I think that wasn't handled as well as some of the suspenseful parts, the mystery parts, just the spectacle and the wonder of the sci-fi parts. I don't know if Denis Villeneuve, maybe that wasn't there in the script. It didn't build up enough to that point. Maybe that's just not his forte. But those parts didn't hit as hard for me as everything else. Now, it sounds like I'm really picking on this movie, but I just have to bring those flaws up because they're things that I noticed. But what this movie does extremely well in terms of those visuals, of that philosophical edge, of just things to look at and things to think about, and of like a pretty darn good mysterious plot, sort of a noir, detective, futuristic, dystopian, cyberpunk thing that Blade Runner was first famous for back in the 80s. That is so well done that it definitely outshines the flaws and still makes this one of my favorite movie experiences of the year. It's right up there with Dunkirk. And I'm going to go watch it again on Monday, and I'll see how it holds up after a second viewing. I think that because of the mysterious plot and the detective style of it, by the way, they do a really great job of giving Gosling a few things to actually do as a detective that are part of it. And I was wondering if they're going to gloss over that because it did take a little bit for that to sort of click in. Overall, definitely one of my favorite experiences of the year. Not a disappointment at all. It's I would give it 5 stars. It's got some flaws, but I just think it's such a wonderful experience to soak in everything that's on. Like, every scene is just so glorious to look at and behold and to think about that any flaws are just washed away. I highly recommend this. Try to avoid any spoilers possible. Before I did my review, I was just poking through and seeing what other people were saying in their reviews. And I think it was one with The Guardian, the UK, or the Daily Mail or something. And there were horrible spoilers within the first couple paragraphs. I don't like to bring down other publications who are doing the same thing I'm doing, but God, I'm really sick and tired of spoilers and reviews. So do yourself a favor. If you have any interest in sci-fi or the original movie, then go see this. You're not going to be disappointed. I recommend you see it in 2D. The cinematographer himself was speaking on his website that his recommended viewing is 2D in standard format. I don't know if that means don't see it in IMAX. I saw it in IMAX, thought it was just fine, but try to see it in 2D unless you really, really love the 3D, then go for that. But I highly recommend it. 5 stars from me. I'll see you next time.
I was good at it. Things were simpler then.